the Unreal Engine, you can make a complete game without doing one line of code. One really cool thing is, and I know Blizzard did this, I'm sure other game companies do too, is they will actually pay for you to get like certificates and certain skill sets and stuff like that too. A lot of these companies are encouraging you to grow and learn.
Today, I have the honor of interviewing Trent Dubberke to learn about what it's like to work as a professional video game tester. Trent, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Joaquin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Trent, three questions that we always like to start off with is, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, I'm actually a full-time student at Full Sail University. I'm in the getting my bachelor's in the video game design program, and in the meantime, I'm just working in sales right now. So that's just kind of get me by until I can get a job in the game industry. I have a little bit of experience, which we'll get into later, but I'm here in Austin, Texas, which is an awesome location for anyone who wants to get into video game design. Lots of game companies here. And one thing that I wanted to be as a kid, there's really two things. When I was like real little, like in elementary, I wanted to be a paleontologist. I was like just
Ooh,
obsessed with dinosaurs. Jurassic
yeah.
Park had just come out. Then when I got a little bit older, I actually wanted to go into video game design. But I wasn't the greatest student at the time in high school. So then I thought, I'm not smart enough for that. But you learn and grow, and here I am now.
No, absolutely. I think there was a report that came out. I think I saw it on Instagram that was like kids who were really into like dinosaurs as like little
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
like, were actually like secret geniuses. And
Yep.
I was thinking that I was like, all of
Yeah,
the
I'm
kids.
not a secret genius, but sure, I'll take that.
Oh yeah, I mean, all of the kids that were super into that as well when I was a little kid, like are
Mhm.
doing super big things now as well. So
Right.
yeah,
Oh,
and so trying to like educate us a little bit more about like professional video game testing. Like what's your experience with it? Like how long have you been working in the realm of the field?
yeah. So I got into it probably at the worst possible time, which is when COVID hit. So I missed out on the experience of being in the office. So I can't really share on that part right now, anyway. Maybe once I get a job in the game industry, you can interview me again. I can tell you a little bit more of that environment. But they are still doing a lot of hybrid. So there's some places they're still doing full remote if you choose to. And so I worked for Blizzard. I worked as a QA tester on Diablo 4. And that was my very first job in the game industry. So it was a great way to get my foot in the door and really getting in like the interview process. Really, they just want to see that, you're real fine tuned, like you're very detail oriented. They ask you about like, video games, bugs that you've come across, stuff like that. And then when it comes to the actual job, I mean, it's not as glamorous as what a lot of people think. Oh, you get paid to play video games. Keep in mind, you're playing a broken video game, especially early
Mm,
on. I mean, you're playing, it's just static meshes. They got placeholder stuff. So if you think that you're just going to go into this and going to have fun playing the game, I can't play Diablo 4 now because I got so burnt out on it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
that's traumatic.
like I said, it's a great learning experience.
Absolutely. And what made you want to go into it in the first place?
I knew that was going to be the easiest way to get my foot in the door.
Mm,
And game design before I started, because I originally went to University of Phoenix. I was getting
yeah,
my bachelor's in computer science, and it was just boring to me. Like I was just looking at things I'd be doing in the future, and just like I can't see myself doing this. So I saw an advertisement for Full Sail University with the game design program, and I was really contemplating it. And so I did a bold move. I literally live like 5 minutes away from the EA office here in Austin.
yeah.
I just went right into their office. I said, "Hey, I'm thinking of going into game design. I was wondering if there are any developers that I could possibly talk to see if I'm making the right decision." Like they were so super friendly and helpful. Like, yeah, just if you wait out in the lobby just a few minutes, let me see if I can find someone.
Yeah.
And they went and found this guy. I can't remember his name because this is a few years ago, but he had been a developer in EA for like 15, 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And he literally
Wow.
just sat down with me in their office there, and we talked for like an hour. And the biggest takeaway that I got from him for anyone who's thinking about going into game design, now I'm not knocking school. Like school is very valuable, um, but what he did say, he said, we do not necessarily require a degree. All that they care about is can you do the work? And there's so many resources online now where you can go and you don't have to go to school. Like I'm 37 right now, so I don't have time on my hands. So that's why I chose to go to school. If I was 18 or like my early 20s and I had more time, I probably would have opted out of school and I would have just gone on and learned how to do things myself. Because if you can build a portfolio, show little projects that you're working on and stuff
Absolutely.
like that, that's going to be key. That's going to get their attention.
Yeah, and so are there any degrees or certifications that you think are truly required to get this job?
No. So one thing that he was saying, like, no, they're like, if you have a degree, it's definitely going to help. But what he was saying is if you build a portfolio and you can show that you can do animation and you don't have to make like huge elaborate games. If you can just make like, a character in a blocked out level where it's just you got shapes and blocks like building out a level and then you got a
Mm.
character and just showing it like going through a puzzle or a maze or whatever, building skills and stuff like that. I mean, show that you know how to do that. No, and Unreal Engine. I don't know if you've heard about Unreal Engine, but Unreal Engine is really the next big thing. A lot of game companies are switching from using their in-house engines to using Unreal Engine, just because Unreal Engine is so fluid. It's so powerful. And you can literally go online, go to unrealengine.com, download Unreal Engine for free, and they have free lessons on there. And another website that I highly recommend is udemy.com, Udemy. And you can go on there super cheap. You can get like full on like 80, like anywhere from 40 to 80-hour classes for like $10.
Wow.
And you can get a certificate that shows that, hey, after this, I know how to do C++ and Unreal Engine 5 or whatever. So there's lots of resources out there.
Awesome. Yeah. And so you mentioned, QA testing. Are there any other titles that, because under the umbrella of professional video game tester that also
Um,
apply?
no, I mean QA testing, which is short for quality assurance, or game tester. That's pretty much what it's known as in the industry.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And Trent, like, what does a day in the life look like of somebody who is a professional QA tester, professional video game tester?
Yeah. So basically, how my day would start, I'd have a cup of coffee, I'd have my breakfast, and then I'd have to log in on the time we're supposed to be on, which I believe is like 9 a.m. You
Hmm.
go on there. Usually, you have a meeting. So like when everyone was online at the time, so we were all working from home. So we would
Yeah.
get in our Zoom meetings. We'd have our breakout meetings and be like, "Hey, listen, this is what we need to do." And so they would have groups of people. So, like for example, for QA testers, like you're not just going and just blindly playing a game. Oh, here's a bug. Like they would put you in groups. Like, okay, you guys are going to work in the main quest. These other people might work on the side quests. Other people might be working on art assets. Like, can you go and you see anything wrong with the art or the environment and stuff like that? And then you would have huge spreadsheets that the whole entire basically Diablo 4 team would have access to. And every time that you would find a bug, you go to the right category and you would need to record it, like video record. You need to type down how did you basically replicate that. So you need to make sure if it's a bug, can you replicate it at least 3 times? And then basically you're signing that to either a certain department. If it's art, in a sense, art department, animation, combat, so on and so forth. And then basically, then all of these departments, they go in and they say, okay, these are all the reported bugs. We need to go in and fix these. So then they would go and flag them, saying that, hey, these are being worked on. And then once they get them fixed, they would say that they're fixed. And then as the QA tester, there would be times like at the end of the week, we would go and check, make sure that the bugs that they flagged as fixed, we would go in and make sure that they really were fixed. Then if they were, we'd close them out.
Gotcha. And how long would you be at the office or online?
Yeah, so it's a full. We would do 8 hour shifts. Sometimes with a lot of bigger game companies, you got the publishers, so you really got crunch time. Like you have to make sure that you get certain builds done by a certain date.
Right.
So we would work overtime. They would have mandatory. Sometimes they would offer optional overtime, and if they wouldn't get enough people, then they would have mandatory overtime.
Mm,
But it was pretty sweet. If they did the overtime, they would buy us dinner, and they'd just
mm,
give us money, and we just use DoorDash or whatever. If you're in the office, they'd probably have something a little bit more elaborate.
gotcha. Yeah. And so would you say most of the time is spent doing those tasks of like kind of engaging with the bugs, like trying to bring them out and nutting them down? Or what other tasks would you say
Yeah,
that
so
you
yeah,
use?
so it was a lot of different tasks because I mean, there's a lot of different categories, especially on AAA games. Like you have huge amount of quests, you have huge amount of world to discover and everything. But then sometimes they would be like, okay, listen, we got ahead of our schedule. Now we just want you guys to go out and just play the game, just have fun.
Mm,
If you come across a bug, then you report it. But yeah, they just want to just have you go in there and just have it from you have to switch your mindset from playing the game as a QA tester and try to play it as a player.
yeah.
Because, like,
Take
yes,
the
like
player
I
seat.
know all the ins and outs, but how would a new person who's never played this game before, how would they, approach this? How would they perceive this?
Gotcha. And so what tools and technologies do you actually use as part of your job?
I would say the tools that we primarily use, and with each game company, it's going to be slightly different.
Mm,
But Excel, like, definitely know how to use Excel spreadsheets. I don't care what game company you're working with; everyone's going to use Excel spreadsheets. So definitely, at least get the basics down. If you can learn how to do more advanced stuff in spreadsheets, like creating graphs and algorithms and all that stuff and making things look organized, they're going to appreciate you so much more when it comes to that.
yeah.
So definitely Excel. Um, and then, when it comes to game engines, if you can learn to use, now I know there's Unity out there. Unity's kind of being put on the back burner right now. And obviously, a lot of these in house game engines you don't have access to. So, Unreal Engine is
Mhm.
completely open source. So, anyone, like I said earlier, download that for free. If you can learn to use Unreal Engine, it's going to be real easy to transfer their skills over to other game engines. Now, Bethesda, the company that makes like Fallout and Skyrim and all that stuff, they've given their engines, the creation engine is open source. And so a lot of people, if you are like in the modding communities, like on the nexus.com website, a lot of like the big time modders there who just doing this on their own dime, um, have gotten jobs, like full time jobs from Bethesda and other companies because of these open source
Yeah.
engines that they use.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so Trent, like tell me like what parts of this job are more exciting and interesting to you and which
Mhm.
ones are maybe more hard or emotionally challenging or just boring sometimes.
Sure. So I'll start with the challenging and boring stuff. So
Yeah. Go ahead.
if you're going into game design thinking that it's all about, like, it's going to be, oh, I love to play video games, like I do that every single day, so I think I'd be great at video game design or QA testing. No, it'll probably ruin video games for you. So
Boring.
going into this, and the reason why, going into this, you're pulling back the curtain of how games are made. It's like when you go to a magic show and you see a magician like cut a woman in half or have someone disappear, you're like, whoa, like your mind's just blown. But then once you learn their secret, you're like, oh, really? That's nothing too special. Same thing with video games. Now, for me, it's not ruined, but you have to make sure that when you're going into that, especially as a QA tester, like I said earlier, you're playing a broken game. Okay, so you're not going to have fun, and you're going to be playing the same thing over and over and over. I can't tell you how many times I played the first chapter of Diablo 4, like the opening scenes and
Like
everything.
if you could give me a number, like how many times?
Easily over 300 times, probably. I mean,
Wow.
just yeah. I mean, and I focused more on the beginning stuff. I didn't really do too much with end game, but I know like a lot of people were doing the end game stuff. So like some people would be more end game. I was like I did the beginning stuff. Um, but yeah, so just knowing that it can be very stressful, but if you love what you do, that stress, you should be able to handle it a little bit more. But the really fun part is just everyone, like, you are hanging out with people who have passion for video games. Everyone loves games. Sometimes you can be with a group of friends and they just don't play games, and so you can't talk
Sure.
about all that cool stuff. So it's nice, having that common ground with everyone. And one really cool thing that we would do is we would do things where we would create games together, like just like side projects, nothing to do with Blizzard or anything. We would just go and just see how quickly we can put just a simple game together in just like over a weekend or something like that. And so you're learning from, like me. This is my first time in the game industry. I'm still working on a bachelor's degree, so I don't have that much experience. And here I'm just messing around building game levels for fun with veterans of Blizzard. It's
Yeah.
just awesome. So there's like tons and tons of learning points that you can get here,
Yeah.
just absorbing all that information from these people who have been in this industry for 10, 15, 20 plus years.
Yeah, and it builds camaraderie, I'm sure,
Oh
which
yeah.
is which makes it easier to work there
Yep, definitely.
at the same time. Yeah. And so you mentioned you worked, remotely during COVID. And
Hmm.
so and you also mentioned sometimes depending on deadlines you would have to maybe work a few extra hours and like maybe work
Hmm.
into the evening a little bit.
Yep.
Is that how it is now? Would you say, like, for the most part, like when you go back into it, if it's something you want to go back into, um, is it more of like an office culture? Is it very remote? Is it kind of flexible?
um yeah, so for me, like, some people, they love working from home. Me, it was nice at first, but it became very tiring for a while, and I'm kind of glad that I got out of that job, just because I just I have to separate my home life from my work life. And
Yeah.
like, I was literally just working in the back room, and that's where I play my video games. And so I having everything in the same place was very tiresome, just mentally and everything like that. But they did do as good of a job as they could have to really try to get that culture. Because I mean, I've heard of people talking about what the culture is like when everyone is in the office or anything.
Mhm.
And man, I wish I could have experienced that, and I know I
Yeah.
will eventually. But yeah, but we would have get-togethers. We'd have meetings where we're talking to, like, the top CEOs, the top developers of the company, everything like
Mhm.
that. They would have company nights, so we would go to, like, gatherings and stuff where we would meet in person. We did, like, mini golf and go-karts and go out for
Yeah.
drinks and stuff like that. So we did have that where they try to help, to have that camaraderie, like you said. But yeah, in the flexibility, um, yeah, it's like you're kind of on a time crunch. You're working with a big team, so there's not really too much flexibility. I mean, you got to be in a
Mhm.
certain hour and then work for 8+ hours.
Gotcha. Yeah. And are there seasons of the year where this job is particularly busy? Like, or does it kind of depend on the game? Does it depend on the deadlines? Or would
Um,
you say like before the holidays or on a certain times, particularly
it,
busy?
it Yes and no. So, because as you know, games take years to go through full development cycle. So the times that it gets busy is going to vary for each game. Now, some games, they know from the beginning that they really want to try to push for a holiday release. So
Right.
because of that, like, they know it's like, okay, we need to be everything needs to be gold. Like, gold means it's ready to ship. We need to be gold by a such and such date. Usually by, like, if they want it for a holiday release, like end of September, October, it needs to be gold.
So
So
like
because of that,
FC4. Hmm.
it takes 4 years to do that. Then that means during that 4 years, you have to make sure when you're meeting those milestones that if you're getting close to a milestone where it's like, okay, we have to have this much accomplished, like so much percent of this game completed, so much of this story completed, or the quest lines and stuff by this date. So it can get to be really big crunch time where even for QA testers, we'll be grabbing people from other departments to come and say, hey, we need help with testing, or even from other games. Like it's people from like Call of Duty that we would bring over to
Yeah,
help with that.
gotcha.
So yeah, so it's not like specific seasons or whatever. It just kind of depends on the schedule and when they want to release everything.
Gotcha. And out of curiosity, Trent, like complete curiosity for me, what about those games that like have a new version every year? Like maybe like your sports games like Madden and
Hmm.
FIFA. Like obviously, like within those communities, it's kind of like a joke, like oh, it's the same game every year. But obviously, like it takes a long time to get like these things and like really make them more innovative.
Yeah, it does. And now I've only worked on Diablo 4, but I mean, from what I've learned from in school, and from what I've been learning just on my own and everything like that, those game companies like 2K and EA and stuff like that, um, they are they know what they want to do for like the next year's game. So a lot of times, like they will be like at the beginning, like once they release like this year's game, like when Madden 25 comes out, right when they go to gold, they're going to start working on
The
next
next one.
year's version. Um, and so yeah, and that's it's funny that you mentioned it's like the same game. It's just like a patch, or whatever. Um, but if you think about it, I mean, to push out what they do in just like a year or less is pretty incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, it you do because I mean most games like if you wanted to completely revamp Madden or NHL, which I play a lot of NHL and I'm frustrated with that. But to
Mhm.
completely revamp that game, I mean, you would need at least 2 or 3 years to revamp that game.
Yeah.
So it's like I take it with a grain of salt. I give them the benefit of the doubt. It's like I understand, and I appreciate what game companies do, especially like when games come out where they just kind of fall flat when people are expecting them to be big, like Starfield, for example. Like it fell flat at the launch, and I've actually I'm a huge I'm a Bethesda is actually my dream company. That's the company I want to work for. When Starfield came out, I played the crap out of it, but I quickly found a lot of flaws. But at the same time, I appreciated what they did, and I understand in the long run because they plan on working on this game for 5 years, at least 5 years, and I know where they're going. They already have before this game was even launched. They know where they're going in the next 5 years. So it's like when you look at Skyrim, like Skyrim, more people are playing Skyrim than Starfield right now, which is just crazy because that game came out in like what 2012, like 12 years ago, and literally millions of people are still playing it. But there's no way that I could go back and play the vanilla Skyrim version of what it was when it first came out.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to understand that development is not easy, and you got to be
Mhm.
patient with the developers. And so I try to tell people I'll get on the message board sometime, like, dude, give these guys a break. I mean, what they did was pretty incredible. Yes, they got to fix some things, but it's going to happen. Just be patient.
Yeah. And so, what's your take on like GTA 6 and kind of like that launch and kind of like the timeline of it? Like,
Man,
give me from a QA tester, give me your take.
yeah. So when I saw the first trailer for GTA 6, like I was blown away because I saw the like did you happen to see any of the leaks like before Rockstar had released anything? Did you see the leaks that came out?
I think I saw like something on Twitter, maybe like a snippet or maybe
Yeah.
a picture
So
or two.
this kid who basically hacked into Rockstar, and he's in prison now because of it, which is
Wow.
that's that's another time. We won't get into that. But when I saw that, I was like, ah, man. But you got to understand that was an alpha build. It did not look the prettiest. I mean, it looked maybe like GTA 5, maybe a little worse. But man, and I knew it was going to look better. But man, when I saw that trailer, I was like, holy cow. Like that, I mean, Rockstar always goes above and beyond. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, what, 2017, 2018?
Yeah.
It's still
Mhm.
one of the best looking games out there, if not the best looking game.
Wow.
Um, but man, yeah, you QA testers, even though they're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, they can make or break a game. I know there's some companies where they don't really have any like QA testers where they're just specifically QA testers. They'll have their own developers and stuff do it, and you can tell what game companies really put focus on their QA testing. And Blizzard has actually been pretty good
Yeah.
when it comes to their bugs, but Bethesda has the that name going Bugthesta. I don't know if you've heard of that. They have so many bugs, and people are blown away. You can tell that compared from like Oblivion and Skyrim and Fallout. I
Mhm.
mean, just tons of bugs in the beginning. Like you expect it, and because you expect it, it's like okay, this is just comes with the
Yeah.
company, but I'm still
You
going to
manage
enjoy
your
the game.
expectations a little bit better. Yeah.
Starfield came out. I mean I was listening to interviews. They said that it's gonna have the fewest bugs of any launch that Bethesda's done. I was like, okay, we'll see. I played the game. I don't think I came across I know I didn't come across any game breaking bugs. Maybe little minor bugs, like maybe like a misspelling or something like that. But I was just blown away. And so you can tell that they really, really took it's almost like they took offense to the name Bugthesta. It's like, oh no, we're gonna get QA testers, and
Yeah.
you can tell like
They
it,
were offensive.
even though it fell flat with some of the innovation and stuff like the open world and exploration, but when it came to quality, man, it was smooth.
Gotcha. And Trent, back into kind of the thick of the interview. You've mentioned some things about Q&A testing that maybe like people overestimate.
Hmm.
Are there any more that you might want to highlight? Just is there like a
Um,
misconception, another misconception,
so
like overhype?
yeah, so I will say this that if you're looking, so that it's kind of a double edged sword. Good and bad of going into QA
Hmm.
testing. If you want to go into QA testing just for the fun of it and you don't plan on like growing or anything, great, go for it. That's awesome. You'll have some fun with it. But I will tell you this, if you're going into QA testing hoping to rise up, I've been told from plenty of other developers that it can be difficult to rise up from QA testing. You're kind of stuck in that. And so if you're going to QA testing, you really got to strive hard on getting yourself noticed. It's not going to just happen naturally. So
Yeah.
you have to get the attention, of the developers and go above and beyond.
Gotcha. And are there any things that people might underestimate about this position?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier. Just know it's not like you're just playing video games the whole time. And it can be mentally draining. So you have to be able to take care of your mental health when it comes to this. Because, I
Mm.
mean, sure, you might easily play video games all weekend long, when you're home from school or whatever. But when you're playing the same game 8, 10,
8 hours a day.
12 hours a day,
Wow.
every day, it can be a lot. And so you really got to know how to step back and just kind of, you know, take care of this up here.
Gotcha. And so, Trent, the next question is, what is the fastest way somebody can get into this profession, especially if you come from a non-traditional background and you just want to get your foot in the door? Obviously, like your story,
Mhm.
fascinating. Like you just walk into the office and you say, "Hey, I'm interested in pursuing a job potentially." But what would you say is generally like the fastest way to get into this profession?
Fastest way. So, like I said, if I was 18 years ago or 18 years old again, fresh out of high school, what I would do because I graduated in 2005. So back then, didn't have any of the resources that we have now. Go download Unreal Engine 5. Just play around with it, watch YouTube videos, or you can go on the Unreal Engine website. They have lessons on there on how to do everything. And the really cool thing is, which I didn't mention while we were talking here, is to be a game designer. See, the thing that kind of made me nervous is I thought you had to learn like C++ or C sharp. And it's like, man, it's like, because I've tried it. It's just, it's a very tough language to learn.
Right.
The
Yes.
Unreal Engine, you can make a complete game without doing one line of code. So what Unreal Engine does is they simplify it. It's getting to make games easier and easier now. Like basically anyone can do it. They use what's called visual scripting. So basically you go in there and you have all these different, they're called nodes, and you have like this screen where you go and you just plug in these nodes, and you're basically plugging in all these different connections telling what the game you want to do. So if you know what you want your character or the environment or whatever to do, or open up the UI menu, you just search that keyword. And then, I mean, it's not just, oh, I don't need to study anything to do this. I mean, there's thousands of different connections, and you got to know how to connect them in the right way and everything like that. But it's much easier than having to write C++ for every single line. Now, if you want to learn C++, you the advantage that you're going to have above people who are doing just what's called blueprints in Unreal Engine is
Hmm.
you are limited a little bit in how much you can do with blueprints, especially when it comes to very powerful big games. So once you hit your limit with certain things, then you do have to know some C++. I'm at the end of my degree here at Full Sail, and I only had one class in C++. And after that class, I have never used it since.
Yeah.
But now there's people who are complete programmers now. They will do that. But if you want to be a game designer, where that's basically you're blocking out levels, you're plugging things in and stuff like that, making things look good. That's fine. But yeah, so just go in Unreal Engine, do the lessons, and then also the website I mentioned, udemy.com. Dude, check that out. It is an awesome website. You can learn to do anything you want on there when it comes to the game industry.
Yeah, and it sounds like Trent. It's really important to really build kind of a portfolio. Like, correct me
Yes.
if I'm wrong, but especially if you're trying to get your foot in the door at a gaming company, like it's good to say, "I have this. I'm interested in, pursuing a career here." Obviously, like there must be a networking aspect to it, but you kind of have to have some experience, at least like a good level of interest that you can say, "Hey, I have these projects that I've worked on
Right.
that kind of back up that
Yeah,
interest."
because if you send in a resume to be even just like a junior game designer, if you do not have a portfolio, they won't even look at your resume. It's like
Yeah.
this guy doesn't have anything. It's like, how do we know that he can do the job? So if you want to get a job, you have to have a portfolio. And what I mean by portfolio, just go like on Weebly.com, make a free website, or Wix is another one.
Wix, yeah,
But
yeah.
make a free website and just put your stuff on there. Like, put your screenshots, videos of you walking through, your game levels that you've made. And don't just show like what the player sees, but also show what the developers want to see. Show them behind the scenes, show them the code and the blueprints, all that stuff. How did you make this work? So that's going to be another key thing to have.
Yeah, and so Trent, if somebody's maybe not taking a traditional route and going into video game testing, what other fields are people coming from? Is it random or are there themes?
Um, so I mean, yeah, like when it comes to game design, not really. If it's just something you want to do, as long as you have that portfolio, I mean, it doesn't matter what background you have, you can get into it. But other areas that really transition well into like game development,
Hmm.
like animation, for example.
Mm.
You can do animation. Like if you're doing, like, let's say you're working for a marketing company and you're doing animation for some company for advertisements. You're like, dude, this is boring, but you're good at animation. Take that over to game design. Start making animation for game characters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's another one. Or if you're really good at drawing, you can become a concept artist. If you're programming for some bank or IT company or whatever, and you want to do something. A lot of those skills you can take right over to the game industry.
Yeah, and so what does somebody have to be good at or like doing to be good at this job? Like you mentioned those skills that are transferable.
Hmm.
What skills kind of have to come easily to you?
Well, one thing is, and this is one thing that I really had to work on, is you really have to be organized. Um, because that's the thing. Because keep in mind, you are anywhere from, like, if even with a small company, let's say it's just you and five other guys or girls, and you're working on this game, and even small games today, there's a lot of data, a lot of stuff that you need to keep track of. And so you got to know that they can't read your mind. They don't know the stuff that you're working on. And so you really have to be good at, putting notes in, keeping things organized, like in Excel
Yeah.
spreadsheets and stuff like that. And even more so when you're working like Rockstar, they have like, so like, I don't think it's 1,000, but I think it's like right around 1,000 employees. And so if you don't have that organization, and that's going to be a deal or no deal right there. And
Gotcha.
then really being detail oriented is another really big thing, because
Hmm.
obviously you need to have things very precise in games because people are going to notice that stuff. Like, dude, I can't tell you like how many small little things that I notice in games after being a game tester that just
Hmm.
drive me up the wall now that most people probably won't even notice. And so
Yeah.
to make a really polished game, you need to make sure that not even the smallest details are just completely rooted out.
Yeah. And how long does it take usually for somebody to get really good at this job?
At
If
QA
as a
testing,
kid. Hmm.
it kind of varies. It just kind of depends on the person. But I know, like when I was at Blizzard, I had somewhat of a leadership role within like 4 or 5 months. I know there are some people in like 6 months they were already being promoted. So it just kind of depends on the initiative that you're putting in with this. And I mean, are you just doing this just for a paycheck, or are you doing this because you really want to learn and grow?
Gotcha. And that's cool because it sounds like after a few months, obviously, like you have like a baseline set of skills, like but you build them and you kind of start building a
Hmm.
name for yourself.
Yep. Yep, definitely. And
Awesome.
and one really cool thing is, and I know Blizzard did this, I'm sure other game companies do too, is they will actually pay for you to get like certificates and certain skill sets and stuff like that too. So
Oh,
they're
awesome.
so they're they a lot of these companies are encouraging you to grow and learn.
Yeah. And so, what is the typical promotion path like then? From entry, as a QA tester,
Hmm.
where do the people go after that? You say some people
Yes.
like love to stay in there, but what
Yeah.
is
So
the
so
extent?
like for example, like if you're just being a QA tester, you're taking, instructions and direction from someone above you. And so if you're going to get promoted, they're like, okay, hey, listen, Trent, we want you to basically, we're going to have you in charge of 5 people. And we need you to make sure that you get at least within this week, we need to have 300 tickets completely closed out. So here you're basically keeping on top of everyone, making sure that they're staying focused, making sure that they're closing out the tickets right and everything like that. And so in order to get to that, it's just showing that you're going just a little bit above and beyond of what's expected of you. Maybe you're checking in, you're communicating really well. Communication is huge.
Yeah.
Leaving really, really good notes that's just helping, other people well. And also, if you're the person that other people are coming to, like, hey, how do I do this? I heard you're really good at that. And just helping other people, like, they're going to take notice of them. Like, you know what? We need to promote this guy. Everyone's going to him, so we might as well make him in charge of something.
Yeah, and I think that's a great piece of advice, Trent. I think something that I've seen a very important theme, especially if you're trying to get to that next level in organization, is
Hmm.
how do you make someone else's job easier, right? And so as a QA tester, it might be, I'm assuming here, but it might be good to say like, obviously, like, you want to take good notes, like you
Hmm.
want to find those bugs, like you want to be really detail oriented because you want to make the person who has to fix those, you know, their life easier.
Yes.
You know, gotcha.
Yep. Definitely.
And where do QA testers typically go? Do they stay in QA testing, or do they go into more design? And
Um, yeah, you do see it happen every now and then. I know when I was working for Blizzard, there was this one girl. Oh man, we were so happy for her. She'd been a QA tester for about 2 years, and she was really, really good. Like she's an awesome artist, and she got promoted to one of the lead game artists for Diablo 4. And man, that was just such a huge thing. It's like seeing the support and the happiness of everyone else on the team. Seeing her going from QA tester to lead concept art and stuff like that. So yeah, if you have those skill sets and you're in QA testing and programming or art or whatever, let people know, show off your stuff there. That's
yeah,
that's the time to shine and make sure that they take notice.
yeah. And what is the average salary, Trent, for somebody in QA testing?
Um, so I know at Blizzard we were paid hourly, and there it was like right around like $22 an hour. And then when we had overtime, they would do time and a half. So, we'd be, around close to like $40 for overtime.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And what about? Do you know about video game design?
Yeah. So starting out depends on the company, the size of company that you're going with. But I know for a game designer, you start out between like 50 and 65,000 a year. And I know programmers, they make more. But I know start out at that base salary for like the first 2 years or so, and then like we talked about, show that you can do that work, you show initiative
Hmm.
to learn and grow. And I know for game designer, then you can go from that from anywhere from like 80 to $100,000, and then programmers can get all the way up to like 150 $200,000. So because programming, it takes a lot to do. So it's you definitely got to pay them because it's a lot.
Yeah. And so, Trent, is there a field that people go into? We talked about fields that people come from. Typically, you mentioned animators, like
Mm-hmm.
great artists. Are there fields that people move on to? Like, what kind of work do a lot of QA testers go after their, tenure in QA testing? Are there any themes, or do they kind of springboard into random
Yeah,
fields?
I mean, because there's now that I mean, there's so many different because games are getting like because like back in like the 80s and 90s, I mean, you had just a handful of people doing everything, but now games are getting so advanced where you have all these different departments. I mean, it's not just like, oh, you're a game artist, or you're a concept artist, or you're an animation artist, or you're a character artist, or you're an environmental artist. So there's all these different types of areas that you can go into. So really, it just depends on QA testing is very broad. So it's like I said, it's a way to get your foot in the door. It's a way to build connections. And speaking of connections, I just want to kind of throw this in there. I also highly recommend getting like an Indeed or LinkedIn profile and building connections through that way. And
Yeah.
because that's how you're also, and that's another way that you're going to get grab attention from people is start posting stuff on your LinkedIn. I haven't started doing that yet. I'm still working like on my portfolio. I've kind of been neglecting that area, but something I'm going to very soon start doing is just putting stuff on my LinkedIn for people to look at. And also, when you follow, like, I'll start following like a lot of other game developers here in the Austin area, and they'll accept me. And just looking at the stuff that they have on their profiles is just hugely motivating for me to see it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, dude, I mean, this guy just did like this Star Wars concept art like over the weekend of like a game that he had in his head. I was like, dude, that is so awesome. Makes me want to go and do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, kind of being in that room.
Yep.
And so, are there any, kind of going into our last few questions here, are there any books, resources, programs, certifications that you would absolutely recommend for somebody wanting to get into this profession? And are there any popular ones that you might not actually recommend?
So I do have a book that I actually just finished. If you really want to get in a place and you want to, climb the ladder and get promoted and all that stuff and be a leader, highly, highly recommend. And this isn't just for game design. This is for like all different fields. Developing the Leader Within You 2.0 by John C. Maxwell. Any book by John C. Maxwell is going to be absolutely incredible. He's like Anyone who wants to be a leader, just read his stuff. Just incredible stuff.
Hmm.
So definitely check that one out. And then when it comes to certifications, start out with Unreal Engine and then go to Udemy. And when you complete courses on there, once you finish everything, down at the bottom, it'll actually give you a certificate saying that you've completed this. And when you complete that, you'll have all that work to show also. So that's what I would recommend.
Wonderful. And Trent, we're here. Our last question. I
Mhm.
think this is a great one that we'd love to ask. Is when what would you tell yourself, your younger self, when you were at the beginning of your career and wanting to go into QA testing?
At the beginning of my career, before I decided I was going to go into game design, the biggest thing is go all in. Like that's the biggest thing. Like make sure that you're giving 100%, um and educate yourself on it. Don't just do like the bare minimum. Like go in there, educate yourself as much as you possibly can. Like, yes, I'm going to Full Sail University, one of the best video game schools, or for schools for video game design, but I'm still teaching myself outside of school how to do things.
Hmm.
And another thing, now that we're living like in this crazy futuristic world now with AI technology, I actually talked to my instructor about this because I have been using like ChatGPT to help with certain things, and I asked my instructor, I said, what are your kind of thoughts on using AI technology like ChatGPT in the game industry or even with like schoolwork and stuff like that? And what he said, and this makes complete sense. He said using ChatGPT to learn how to do things is completely fine if you're learning from it. If you're just taking things and copy and pasting it, it's not going to do anything for you. I can't
Right.
tell you how much I've learned from ChatGPT by just saying, "Hey, I need to do this," and then I ask why. I mean, it's
It's
ChatGPT
a
is such a
personal
powerful
teacher.
thing,
Yeah.
and a lot. And the really cool thing is, game companies are starting to embrace it because now it's taken like between 4 and 6 years to develop games, and they said it's not going to take away the creativity, but it's going to speed up the process. So we're going to see
Right.
the development cycle much quicker. So take advantage of the tools that you have. Use AI technology. Use ChatGPT. Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Trent. Trent, if people want to reach out to you, where can people reach out to you to follow along with your work and maybe get a connection?
Yeah. So there's two places that I'm on. Facebook. So you can follow me on Facebook, just Trent Dubberke. I don't really have that common of a name, so you should be able to find me pretty easy on there. Just feel free to hit me a message or send me an invite. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn.
Trent Dubberke
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
So yeah, you
I
can just
find it.
look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook. Yep.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Trent, thank you so much for joining us on the
Hey,
podcast. I learned a
no problem.
ton
Hey,
about
my
gaming industry
pleasure.
in general.
And then maybe once I get a job as a game designer, you can bring me back on and interview me again.
Absolutely. We will follow up 100%. I'll keep in touch on
All
LinkedIn.
right. Thanks, Joaquin.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!